Week 14 of the fantasy football season. His quarterback starts at every matchup this week. Dallas Cowboys at the Detroit Lions Thursday Night Football. So usually these Thursday Night Football games are high scoring more weeks than not. Last week, Dak Prescott, he went out there, threw for a big game versus a good defense of the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's been an MVP type of season for Dak Prescott with receivers like CeeDee Lamb, obviously George Pickens and Jake Ferguson at the tight end position. This week at the Lions, once again, Dak's an easy start. Jared Goff a start, even if St. Brown's out in this game, where right now it's not looking good. He's going to play as St. Brown, where he didn't practice to begin the week. I think Goff still could go out there, put points on the board. We saw last week Brown got hurt. One of the first plays of the game, St. Brown got hurt, and he still went out there and had a decent ball game. So Jameson Williams would be the number one wide receiver, and Tesla would have to step up and make plays. So this week, I know Dallas's defense has improved, but Goff, I still would start him. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Ravens. Aaron Rodgers not 100%. Obviously, he had multiple fractures in the left hand, so he's got to play a lot in the pistol or shotgun receiving the snaps. And then last week, he took a big hit where his nose got busted and possibly broken in that ball game. So Rodgers at 41 years old, he's taking big hits. The numbers have gone down. And this week in a matchup, especially a division matchup at the Ravens, after coming off a bad loss, you know, their defense, they're going to come out there and try to play physical early and often. He's a sit Lamar Jackson to start. Last week, he was a turnover machine, was Lamar Jackson, and we usually don't see two bad games in a row. So this week, versus a good defense of the Steelers, obviously, I still think Lamar's going to go out there. He's going to bounce back, and I know he's not running the football as much and definitely lost a step. Not 100% from the hamstring injury, but I would start him. Obviously, this is a big game for fantasy owners, and you got to stick at times with your top guys, even if they're struggling a little. Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons. Sam Darnold to start. He got banged up a little bit in last week's ball game in the blowout victory versus the Vikings, but his ankle's fine. He should give it a go. So this week it's a good matchup at the Atlanta Falcons, fast track indoors, and then JSN coming off a bad game last week where the defense did the damage. I think Darnold in this offense, they're going to put points on the board early and often, and it's a good matchup at Atlanta. Kirk Cousins a sit. This could be a long day for Kirk Cousins in this offense. Kirk Cousins, we know, takes a lot of hits. We know he's a gunslinger. He's going to turn that football over. And Seattle, one of the best defenses in the league, especially the last month. So this week, it's an easy sit for me. Tennessee Titans at the Cleveland Browns. Cam Ward, he showed some flashes here and there, but obviously this Titan team, one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in all pro football, and you can't trust him where he's done nothing all season long. And this week, a very tough matchup versus one of the better Ds in the league at Cleveland. He's a sit. Shedeur Sanders, a fringe option this week for me. We've seen some bright spots here from Shedeur Sanders. Him and Jerry Jeudy already arguing a couple weeks in to him starting for this Cleveland Brown team. And also as well, he's taken some big hits early on as Sanders. But this week in a decent matchup with Tennessee coming in, if you're in a pinch, he's a fringe option of me. Miami Dolphins at the Jets too. I know he's had a good track record for the most part in his career versus New York Jets, but we just haven't seen much out of Tua over the last few weeks. I know Darren Waller, he returned to the lineup in last week's ball game versus New Orleans Saints, but still, like I said, Tua's not a guy I would trust this part of the season, and especially on the road we've seen throughout his career. He don't really produce consistently. He's a sit. Tyrod Taylor, a fringe option. 2 weeks in a row he started now. Is Tyrod Taylor in this offense? It actually looks pretty decent for this New York Jet team, where they could go out there and put points on the board. So Taylor, 2 weeks in a row, 17 or more fantasy points. So this week a good matchup with Miami coming in. The young receivers and John Mechie and Adonai Mitchell will play decent football, and Breece Hall is a decent receiver out of the backfield. So I actually think Taylor this week with a few buys and guys banged up and in 2 quarterback leagues could be a fringe option. New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tyler Shuck, he's a sit going back early in the season, week 8. He couldn't do anything where they only scored 3 points versus Buck defense, even though I think Shuck's definitely improved over the last few weeks, where the rapport with Chris Olave's gotten better. Juwan Johnson's playing good football, and Devon Bailey even had a big game last week. But this week, even in a good matchup at Tampa Bay, Tyler Shuck, to me, still tough to trust. He's a sit. Baker Mayfield to start. I know he's been banged up a majority of the season as Baker Mayfield, but he's still gutting it out. He's a tough guy, obviously, no doubt about it. But to get some reinforcements back in this lineup has been big. Chris Godwin, he played more snaps last week's game. He made a few big plays. Bucky Irvin, he could do everything out of the backfield. He's back in the lineup as well. So this week in a good matchup versus Saints, Baker's a start. Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Daniel Jones a start. Even with a broken fibula, he's gone out there and he's still producing numbers. A big division game at the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. This is for first place. Both teams 8-4. And like I said, Daniel Jones, he's going out there. Very tough guy. He's a competitor, and he's making plays with guys like Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren, and Alec Pierce. Trevor Lawrence to start the last couple weeks. Lawrence, he's going out there putting up fantasy points, and no turnovers have been a problem for Lawrence, and also taking big hits, but he's putting points on the board. He's going to give you some points on the ground, anywhere from 3 to 5 minimum weekly on the ground is Trevor Lawrence. And this week in a potential high-scoring game with the Colts coming in, I like Lawrence once again as a start, where he's played well, like I said, the last few weeks. Commanders at the Vikings, Jaden Daniels, he don't want to sit out the remainder of the season. He's worried that possibly this Commander team is going to go out there and draft another quarterback. The competitive guy as well as Daniels, and also as well, it was his left elbow at least, not his right, where we'll see if he's cleared to play, but as of now, it's not looking that way. But like I said, it was hinted last week that possibly Daniels will try to return. So if he does return to the lineup, he's a start for me is Jaden Daniels. This is a good matchup in Minnesota. And the way Minnesota's offense operates, where they got short drives or turn the football over a lot, it tires their defense out, and that obviously gives the advantage to the offense. If Daniels is back in the lineup, he's a starter. And if not, Marcus Mariota I would start. Last week he went out there in tough weather conditions with a ripped up field where it was tough to plant and make plays. And Mariota had a great game, I thought, versus Denver Broncos, where they lost on the last play of the game going for a 2-point conversion to put it out. So Mariota, we know he can run the football. Terry McLaurin back in the lineup's a big plus, and Zach Ertz had a monster game, over 100 yards receiving. So this week in Minnesota, no weather elements, indoor game. If Mariota's starting, he's a start. J.J. McCarthy looks like he's cleared up from the symptoms of the concussion, so he might be back in this game. Well, Max Brosmer, it just doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Both these guys, in the games we've seen them in the season, they just haven't been good at all. And you would think with guys like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, they could go out there and make plays, but obviously that hasn't been the case. So even in a matchup versus a mediocre to poor defense of the Commanders, both these quarterbacks, whoever starts, are easy sits. Cincinnati Bengals at the Buffalo Bills, this could be a potential high-scoring game, even in cold December weather and possible snow in Buffalo. But Joe Burrow last week, he definitely looked a little bit rusty, missed a couple throws, but then a couple throws, you're like, yeah, Joe Burrow's back. And he hasn't missed a beat with some of the plays he made in that ball game. So they went in there in Baltimore, they dominated, they made plays, was the Cincinnati Bengal team. And this week at Buffalo, like I said, could be a high-scoring game, even if T. Higgins isn't back in the lineup. Burrow will start, Josh Allen will start each and every week. Last week, he broke the most rushing touchdowns from a quarterback of all time is Josh Allen. And even with limited options in the receiving game, and Kincaid has been out for the last month, he's still putting up points more weeks than not. So this week in a slam dunk matchup versus a bad defense of the Bengals, he's a start. Denver Broncos at the Vegas Raiders, Bo Nix a start. I know his numbers have been up and down all season long, is Bo Nix, but this week it's a great matchup with the Vegas Raiders, a defense that can't stop anyone, and also it's an indoor game, which is always a plus. So this week, Nix, I think he could go out there, have a good game. We saw him and Cortland Sutton get back on the same page, and we saw Evan Ingram have his best game of his Denver Bronco career in his first season. Geno Smith is it. Hasn't done much all season long, throwing interceptions, taking big hits. And he has to verse one of the best defenses in the league. So this week, Geno, it could be a long day for him. And this Bronco DST could put up huge numbers. Chicago Bears at the Packers, Caleb Williams, he's a fringe option to me. Caleb Williams, yes, he's making plays, but no one's not doing. These guys really aren't doing much. Where this has been a run-first team over the last month of the season. Roma Dunze's numbers are way down. DJ Moore, besides the one big game going back a few weeks ago in Week 12 versus Steelers, he's done much over the last month. And Luther Burden and Colston Loveland, they'll make a few plays here and there, but nothing big in the last few weeks. So this week in a tough matchup, and this could be bad weather where it could be tough to throw the football. To me, Caleb's a fringe option. Jordan Love is start, coming off a monster game last week, 4 touchdowns in the victory at the Detroit Lions. And Jordan Love, he loves playing in Lambeau Field, where those weather elements obviously don't bother him. So I know this bad defense has definitely improved over the last few weeks especially, but still Jordan Love coming off a big game. He's a start for me this week. Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals, Matthew Stafford, he's a start for me in this ball game. Matthew Stafford, I know last week 3 bad turnovers, but he's still a top MVP candidate. Devontae Adams having a monster first year. with the Rams, 14 touchdowns on the season. Him and Puka have been locked in all season long. And Stafford, we know he's a gunslinger where turnovers are going to be part of his game at times. But this week, indoor game, great matchup where you don't have to deal with the rain like he did last week at Carolina. He's a must-start. And Jacoby Brissett, it just doesn't matter the matchup. If he's going to get his points in garbage time or in a competitive close game, he's putting up pretty much over 300 yards per game. Marvin Harrison back in the lineup. Trey McBride having a monster season with Brissett on the center. So this week, even with the Rams coming in, a great defense. We saw Bryce Young go out there, have a good game. Brissett a start. Houston Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs. C.J. Stroud, he's a sit for me. Stroud came back in last week's ball game, made a few plays in that one. But once again, it's this defense that carries this team, where this offense, they just got to get in field goal range a majority of the game and win their ball games like that. So this week, C.J. Stroud in a tough matchup, in a tough place to play, especially with the Chiefs back against the wall at Arrowhead. He's a sit. Patrick Mahomes, he's a starter each and every week. Last week he went into Dallas. He had a big game. And Mahomes, he did everything he can to win the game for this Kansas City Chief team. But receivers dropping passes and bad penalties cost him. So this week, even in a tough matchup versus one of the highest-ranked Ds in the league, Mahomes is matchup-proof, and he's a start each and every week. Monday Night Football, Philadelphia Eagles at the Los Angeles Chargers. Jalen Hurts to start. I know he's been up and down over the last couple weeks, is Jalen Hurts. But it just seems like every week, for the most part, at worst case, he's going to get 18, 20 fantasy points is his flaw. So this week, they don't have to deal with the outside elements, which is a big thing, obviously, for a quarterback with his grip, dealing with either, obviously, snow, rain, or wind or cold weather. And this week, it's indoors, SoFi Stadium, Monday night. And this Charger defense, I don't think is all that great. Where we saw the Raiders, they had some decent drives in that ball game last week. So Hurts, him and Brown are back on the same page. And I think this week, Hurts, once again, is a solid start. And to the Chargers, Justin Herbert, we'll see if he plays in this game. He got surgery on his non-throwing hand, the left hand for Justin Herbert. And last week he gutted it out, finished the game, running all the formations in the gun and the pistol formation was Justin Herbert. And we know he's a tough guy. We know he's going to try to give it a go even after coming off of surgery this week is Herbert. And he's a start if he plays in this game, even versus a good defense of Philadelphia, where obviously Philly, they've had their home field advantage, playing great defense this season. But when we've seen them on the road, especially a couple weeks ago when they versed the Cowboys, they had trouble stopping that offense. So I think Herbert, if he plays in this game, he's a starter. And if Trey Lance is in there, Trey Lance, he's a former first-round bust. He's bounced around a little bit now for San Francisco, the Cowboys, and he has the backup with the Los Angeles Chargers. But if he's in the lineup, I think this Philadelphia Eagle defense tees off, and that's a big game, so he will be a sit if he starts. So that's quarterback start, sit every matchup for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.